The road stretched endlessly ahead, the headlights of the black luxury car cutting through the darkness. The hum of the engine was steady, but inside the car, tension crackled like a live wire. Lena sat in the passenger seat, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other clenched into a fist on her lap. She was 8 months pregnant, exhausted and aching from the long journey. But the physical discomfort wasn't what bothered her the most. It was the silence. Damien Carter, her husband, sat beside her. His sharp blue eyes locked on the road. His jaw set in a hard line. He had barely spoken a word in the last hour. Lena glanced at him, hoping for a sign of warmth, but there was nothing. Just cold detachment. Her heart squeezed with unease. "Damien," she finally said, her voice quiet but firm. He didn't respond. He tried again. "Can we stop somewhere? I need to use the restroom." His grip on the steering wheel tightened. "We'll be home in an hour. Can't it wait?" Lena sighed, pressing a hand to her belly. "No. The baby is pressing on my bladder. Please, Damien." A muscle twitched in his jaw. Without a word, he swerved onto an exit ramp, leading to a lone gas station in the middle of nowhere. The neon sign flickered, barely holding on to life, and the parking lot was nearly empty. Damien pulled up to the front of the store and put the car in park. "Make it quick," he muttered. Lena exhaled, relieved to get a break from the tension. "I will." She pushed open the door, stepping out carefully. A sharp gust of wind sent chills down her spine. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself and hurried inside. The restroom was old, the mirror scratched and spotted with grime. As she washed her hands, she whispered to her reflection, "Just a little longer, Lena. Then everything will be okay." She didn't know why she said it. Maybe because deep down she knew something was wrong. She dried her hands and stepped outside, only to feel her heart stop. Damien's sleek black car was gone. Lena blinked, looked around. Maybe he had just moved to a different spot. Maybe. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She fumbled for it, her hands suddenly unsteady. Message. "Damien, we're done. Take care of yourself." Her stomach dropped. She hit the call button. Rang once. Voicemail. Panic rose in her throat. She tried again. Nothing. Then another message popped up. Photo. Damien. At a luxury beach resort. His arm draped around another woman. Sophia. Lena's breath came in short gasps. This wasn't happening. This wasn't real. But it was. Damien had abandoned her. Alone. Pregnant. In the middle of nowhere. Lena stood frozen outside the dimly lit gas station. Her breath coming in shallow gasps. The cold wind cut through her coat, but she barely noticed. Her mind was racing, her heart pounding. Her husband, the man she had trusted with her life, had just abandoned her. Pregnant. Alone. With nothing. Her fingers trembled as she clutched her phone, staring at the message again. "We're done. Take care of yourself." No explanation. No apology. Just over. Tears burned at the back of her eyes, but she refused to cry. Not yet. Not here. She needed to focus. Think. Her first instinct was to call him again. Maybe this was some cruel joke. Maybe. Voicemail. Again. Her stomach churned with nausea. She tried to steady herself, but the world felt like it was tilting. She had no money. No wallet. No ID. Damien had taken everything, leaving her with just her phone. She looked around the empty highway, hoping for a sign of life. Car. Person. Anything. But the road stretched into the darkness, desolate and silent. Lena turned toward the gas station. Maybe she could ask for help. She took a shaky step forward, but then pain. A sharp, unbearable pain shot through her abdomen. She gasped, doubling over, clutching her belly. "Whoa. No, no, no. Not now." Contraction. Too strong. Too sudden. Her baby wasn't due for another month. This couldn't be happening. She gritted her teeth, forcing herself to breathe through it. It passed after a few moments, leaving her breathless and shaken. She needed help. Lena staggered to the gas station door and knocked frantically. The lights were on, but the place looked deserted. After a few agonizing seconds, an old man in a stained flannel shirt finally appeared behind the counter. He squinted at her through the glass. "We're closed," he called out. "Please," Lena begged, her voice shaking. "I need help." The man hesitated before unlocking the door. "What's wrong?" "My husband," she swallowed, forcing the words out. "He left me here. I'm 8 months pregnant. I don't have money or a way to leave." The man's eyes softened, but he sighed. "Listen, lady, I wish I could help, but I ain't got no way to get you anywhere. Nearest town is 10 miles out, and my truck's out of gas." Lena's heart sank. "Is there anyone you can call?" "Taxi. A bus." He shook his head. "Ain't no taxis out here. And the next bus don't come till morning." Morning. That was hours away. She couldn't wait that long, not with the contractions starting. The man hesitated, rubbing his neck. "I got an old cot in the back room. You can rest there till morning if you need." Lena wanted to refuse, but what choice did she have? She nodded numbly. "Thank you." He led her to a small, cluttered storage room with a rickety cot pushed against the wall. "You sure you're gonna be okay?" he asked, his brow furrowed. Lena forced a weak smile. "I'll be fine." But deep down she wasn't sure if that was true. As she lay down, the weight of everything crashed over her. The betrayal, the fear, the growing pain in her belly. And for the first time since Damien left, she let herself cry. Lena curled up on the thin cot, shivering. The storage room smelled like old cardboard and motor oil, but at least it was warm. Her hands rested on her swollen belly, feeling the occasional movement from her baby. A tiny reminder that she wasn't completely alone. But the pain hadn't stopped. Another contraction gripped her, making her suck in a sharp breath. She squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for it to pass. This wasn't just stress. Her body was preparing for labor. She needed a hospital. The gas station clerk, Henry, she had learned his name earlier, stood in the doorway, watching her with a troubled expression. "You sure you don't want to call someone? Maybe a family member?" Lena shook her head. I don't have anyone." Her parents had passed away years ago. Her closest friend lived across the country. And Damien, her own husband, had made it painfully clear that he didn't care. Henry sighed, rubbing the back of his head. "Look, lady, I feel bad for you, I really do. But I ain't got a way to get you anywhere." Lena swallowed hard. "What about an ambulance?" He hesitated. "You got insurance." She stiffened. Damien had always handled the bills, the paperwork, everything. But if he had abandoned her, would he have cancelled her insurance too? I don't know." Henry sighed. "That ain't good." Lena pressed a hand to her forehead, fighting the wave of panic rising in her chest. She needed to figure this out. She couldn't just sit here and wait for something worse to happen. She took a deep breath and reached for her phone. Maybe there was still a way to get help. She scrolled through her contacts, her heart pounding. But as she clicked on one number after another, the calls wouldn't go through. Damien had cut off her phone service. Lena stared at the screen in disbelief. No messages. No internet. Nothing. He had erased her. A lump formed in her throat. How could he be so cruel? He was the father of her child. They had once loved each other, or at least she had loved him. Had it all been a lie? Her body trembled, not just from the cold but from the overwhelming sense of abandonment. Then another contraction hit, this time stronger. Lena gasped, gripping the cot. Henry rushed over, his eyes wide. "That don't look good." She clenched her teeth, breathing through the pain. "I need to get out of here." Henry hesitated before grabbing his keys. "I'll try my truck again. Maybe she'll start." Lena nodded weakly, clutching her belly. She didn't have time to wait until morning. She needed to find a way out, before it was too late. Henry jingled the keys in his hand, muttering under his breath as he rushed outside to his truck. The sound of the rain pounding against the roof echoed in Lena's ears as she forced herself to sit up. Every movement felt heavy, like she was carrying the weight of the world along with her unborn child. She knew she couldn't rely on Henry's truck. If it didn't start, then what? She was running out of options. Lena inhaled sharply as another contraction rolled through her body. They were getting closer together. This wasn't stress. This was labor. Panic clawed at her throat. No. It was too soon. The baby wasn't due for another month. Her fingers clenched into fists. She couldn't afford to break down now. Henry ran back inside, dripping wet, his face grim. She ain't starting. Lena felt her stomach drop. But, he said quickly, I called my buddy over in town. He's got an old sedan that might do the job. He'll be here in about 30 minutes. 30 minutes. That felt like an eternity. Lena closed her eyes, her body rocking slightly as she tried to focus on breathing. She couldn't let fear take over. She had to be strong. For her baby. Henry shifted uncomfortably. You wanna sit up front? Might be warmer. She nodded, struggling to her feet. Henry rushed to help. His calloused hands surprisingly gentle. He guided her to the main shop, where a small space heater hummed near the counter. Lena sank into a chair, pressing a hand against her belly. Thank you, she murmured. Henry grunted. Don't mention it. Silence settled between them. The only sounds were the rain and Lena's uneven breathing. Then something buzzed. Lena's head snapped up. Her phone, dead just moments ago, flashed a single notification. One new message. Her heart pounded as she fumbled to open it. It was from Damien. Don't try to contact me again. It's over. The words felt like a punch to the gut. Tears burned at the back of her eyes. Not because she hadn't already known, but because it was so final. Oh, cruel. She gritted her teeth, her sorrow turning into something else. Wait. Damien had left her stranded, pregnant, and alone. But she wouldn't let him break her. Lena straightened, blinking back her tears. If she made it through this night, she would make sure he regretted ever thinking she was weak. She would survive. And she would make him pay. Lena clenched her phone, her breath shaky as she reread Damien's message. Don't try to contact me again. It's over. He had truly abandoned her. The man she had loved, trusted, and built a life with had left her stranded in the middle of nowhere, pregnant and vulnerable. But she wasn't going to fall apart. Not now. Not ever. A sharp pain shot through her belly, making her gasp. She clutched her stomach, trying to steady her breathing. The contractions were intensifying. Her body was preparing for labor, and she didn't have time to waste. Henry noticed her distress and ran a hand through his graying hair. Damn it, girl, you need a hospital. Lena swallowed hard. How far is the nearest one? About 40 minutes away, Henry said grimly. Her heart sank. That was too far. She needed help now. Just then, the sound of a car engine cut through the storm. Headlights flashed outside the gas station, and Lena felt a surge of hope. Henry hurried to the window. That's my buddy. The door burst open, and a man in his 40s, soaked from the rain, rushed inside. Henry, I came as fast as I could. Lena forced herself to stand, ignoring the pain radiating through her body. Please. I need to get to a hospital. The man nodded quickly. Let's go. Henry helped Lena outside, shielding her from the rain. The old sedan wasn't much, but right now, it was her only chance. She collapsed into the back seat, her breath coming in short gasps. As they sped down the road, Lena clenched her fists. Damien might have left her behind, but she wasn't done fighting. She would survive. For herself. For her baby. And one day, she would make him pay for what he had done. Lena's body tensed as another contraction tore through her. She gritted her teeth, gripping the seatbelt as the old sedan sped down the dark highway. Henry's friend, Tom, kept glancing at her through the rearview mirror. Just hold on, ma'am. We're almost there. Lena squeezed her eyes shut, focusing on her breathing. Sweat trickled down her temple despite the cold. After what felt like an eternity, the car skidded to a stop outside a small-town hospital. Nurses rushed out with a wheelchair, and Lena barely had the strength to hold herself up as they helped her inside. The next few hours were a blur. Doctors asking questions, nurses checking her vitals, the pain intensifying. And then, finally, piercing cry. Lena let out a sob of relief as the doctor lifted a tiny, wailing baby into the air. "It's a girl," the nurse announced with a warm smile. Tears streamed down Lena's face as they placed her newborn daughter in her arms. "You're here," she whispered, pressing a kiss to her baby's forehead. She had been abandoned, left to struggle alone, but in this moment, none of it mattered. She had her baby, and she would never let her feel the pain of betrayal the way she had. As she cradled her daughter, a new strength filled her heart. Damien Carter might have walked away from them, but Lena Carter was far from broken. The scent of saltwater and expensive champagne filled the air as Damien Carter leaned back in his private cabana, watching the waves crash against the shore. Sophia sat beside him in a silk robe, her manicured fingers tracing patterns on his arm. "Finally," she purred. "You're free." Damien took a slow sip of his whiskey, staring blankly at the horizon. The weight that was supposed to lift off his shoulders felt heavier than ever. He had imagined this moment for months, escaping the burden of a pregnant wife, the responsibility of fatherhood, the dull routine of married life. But something was off. He should have felt liberated. Instead, a strange emptiness gnawed at him. "You're awfully quiet," Sophia teased, running a hand through his hair. "Aren't you happy to be here? With me?" Damien forced a smirk. "Of course. This is what I wanted." She leaned in, pressing a kiss to his jaw. "Good. Because I have plans for us." Her words should have excited him. They didn't. His mind kept drifting, to the gas station, to the image of Lena standing there in the cold, confusion on her face. He had ignored her calls, blocked her number. But what if she had gone into labor? He shook his head. "Not my problem." Yet, as the night deepened and the resort came alive with music and laughter, Damien found himself scrolling through social media, searching for any trace of Lena. What was she doing now? Had she found someone to help her? Or was she still out there, stranded and alone? The thought unsettled him. "Damien," Sophia's voice sharpened. "You're distracted." He locked his phone and set it aside. "I'm fine." But even as he pulled Sophia close, the image of Lena, pregnant, scared, abandoned, haunted him. For the first time, guilt crept in. And once it did, it refused to leave. Damien Carter stood on the balcony of his private villa, gazing at the endless blue of the ocean. The salty breeze ruffled his crisp white shirt as he sipped his whiskey, relishing the tranquility of the luxury resort. Sophia stepped behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "You finally did it," she purred, pressing a kiss to his neck. "No more responsibilities. No more Lena." He smirked, placing his glass on the table. "It was time." Sophia laughed, taking his hand and leading him inside. "Now we can enjoy our life without any burdens." But even as she kissed him, Damien's mind drifted. No responsibilities. No burdens. That's what he had wanted, right? Then why did he feel so off? He shook off the thought. Lena would be fine. She was strong. She would figure it out. But hours later, as he lay in bed with Sophia asleep beside him, Damien reached for his phone. Something gnawed at him, a strange restlessness he couldn't shake. He opened his messages. The last one he had sent to Lena stared back at him. "We're done. Take care of yourself." His finger hovered over the call button, but then he hesitated. Well, this was the life he had chosen. There was no going back. Damien turned off his phone and rolled over, closing his eyes. Yet sleep didn't come, because deep down he knew. He hadn't just left Lena. He had left behind something far more precious. And one day, it would come back to haunt him. Lena's entire body trembled as she clutched her belly, struggling to stay upright against the freezing rain. Her contractions were getting stronger, each one a painful reminder that time was running out. The man who had stopped his car rushed toward her, shielding her with his umbrella. "Miss, are you okay?" His deep voice carried concern. Lena tried to answer, but another contraction forced a gasp from her lips. Her legs gave out and she nearly collapsed. Strong arms caught her just in time. "I've got you," he assured, his grip firm yet gentle. "You need a hospital." Lena nodded weakly, barely able to keep her eyes open. The man wasted no time. He lifted her carefully and carried her to his car. The warmth inside was a stark contrast to the bitter cold outside. He turned the heater up and handed her a dry blanket from the back seat. "Breathe," he instructed as he pulled back onto the road. "Try to stay calm. I'm taking you to the nearest hospital." Lena gritted her teeth through another wave of pain. "Thank you," she managed to whisper. He glanced at her, his brow furrowed with worry. "What's your name?" "Lena," she breathed. "Lena Carter." His hands tightened slightly on the wheel. "Carter. As in Damien Carter." She turned her head, eyes filled with pain and exhaustion. "You know him." A dark expression flickered across his face, but he quickly masked it. "Everyone in the business world knows Damien Carter." Lena's heart pounded. Who was this man? Before she could ask, another sharp pain stole her breath, forcing her to grip the seat. The hospital lights appeared in the distance. Relief flooded her as she whispered, "Please, just save my baby." The man nodded. "I will." As they pulled up to the emergency entrance, doctors rushed out with a stretcher. Lena's vision blurred, but before darkness took her, she heard the man say his name. "My name is Adrian Blackwood." And then everything faded. Lena's consciousness flickered as the hospital lights blurred around her. The pain in her body was unbearable, but the only thing that mattered was her baby. As doctors wheeled her inside, voices swirled around her. "She's in active labor. Prep the delivery room. She's severely dehydrated. Start in 4. Lena clutched the hand of the stranger who had saved her, Adrian Blackwood. His face was firm but kind, his grip reassuring. "I'm right here," he said. "You're not alone." Tears welled in Lena's eyes. She had been left on the side of the road like she was nothing, abandoned by the man she trusted the most. But in the darkness, a stranger had appeared. The next few hours were a blur of pain, doctors, and shouts. Lena fought with everything she had, screaming as her body pushed beyond its limits. And then, cry. A loud, desperate, beautiful cry filled the room. Lena gasped, her entire body shaking as a nurse placed a tiny warm bundle against her chest. "It's a girl," the nurse whispered, smiling. Lena sobbed, holding her daughter close. "You're safe, baby," she whispered, kissing her forehead. "Mama's got you." Adrian stood nearby, watching silently. Something in his expression was unreadable, but he didn't look away. Lena finally turned her head to him. "Thank you," she said, her voice weak but full of gratitude. Adrian nodded, but his jaw was clenched. "You don't have to thank me, Lena." He exhaled sharply before adding, "But you do need to know the truth about Damien." Lena's blood ran cold. "What truth?" Adrian's eyes darkened. "The reason he left you. It's worse than you think." Lena's grip tightened on her baby. "Tell me everything." Lena's heart pounded as she stared at Adrian. The exhaustion of childbirth still weighed on her, but his words sent a fresh surge of adrenaline through her. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian hesitated, then pulled up a chair beside her hospital bed. His gaze flickered to the baby sleeping in her arms, his jaw tightening as if struggling with something. "I didn't just happen to be at that gas station that night," he finally admitted. "I was looking for you." Lena's grip on her daughter tightened. "Looking for me? Why?" Adrian exhaled. "Because of Damien." The mere mention of her husband's name made her stomach churn. "Tell me everything," she said, bracing herself. Adrian leaned forward. Damien Carter isn't just some successful businessman. He's a fraud. Lena's breath hitched. What? Adrian pulled out his phone and scrolled through something before turning the screen toward her. It was a set of legal documents, emails, and financial records. He's been laundering money through shell companies, bribing officials, and covering up scandals for years. I've been investigating him for months. Lena's hand shook. You're saying my husband is a criminal? Adrian nodded grimly. Yes. And that's not all. He hesitated before adding, the woman he was with at the resort, Sophia, she's not just an affair. She's his accomplice. Lena felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Adrian continued. They plan to cut you out of his life completely. Not just emotionally but financially. That night, when he left you at the gas station, he had already transferred all your joint assets into his name. Lena's vision blurred. No, that can't be. I have proof, Adrian said, his voice firm. Bank records. Leaked emails. They were planning this for months. Lena shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. Why? Why would he do this? Adrian hesitated. Then his voice darkened. Because you were in the way. He didn't want a wife. He wanted a business deal. And once you got pregnant, you became a liability. Lena felt like she might be sick. Her whole marriage, her entire life, it had all been a lie. But then she looked down at her baby girl, her tiny chest rising and falling. She wasn't just Lena Carter, the abandoned wife. She was a mother now. And she wouldn't let Damien get away with this. Lena wiped her tears, her expression hardening. What do we do next? Adrian's lips curled into a knowing smirk. We take him down. Lena wiped away her tears, her fingers trembling slightly, but there was no hesitation in her voice when she spoke. I want to take him down, she said firmly, looking at Adrian. Adrian gave a small nod. Then we need a solid plan. We can't just confront him. He's powerful and he has connections. We need undeniable proof and the right moment to expose him. Lena looked down at her baby, her heart aching. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting her daughter from a man who had abandoned them so cruelly. What do we do first? She asked. Adrian pulled out a folder from his bag. I've already gathered evidence of his financial crimes. But that's not enough. If we want to completely destroy him, we need something bigger, something personal. Lena frowned. Like what? Adrian hesitated before speaking. His company's biggest investors are very particular about reputation. If we expose him not just as a fraud but as a man who abandoned his heavily pregnant wife, it could ruin him. Lena's hands tightened into fists. Good. Let's do it. Step 1. The media trap. Adrian made a few calls, and within hours, a major journalist was willing to hear Lena's story. They met in a private setting where she poured her heart out, about how Damien had left her at a gas station, stolen everything from her, and moved on as if she never existed. The journalist listened carefully. We need hard proof, she said. Something undeniable. Lena took a deep breath. You'll have it. Step 2. The leak. Adrian managed to retrieve leaked emails between Damien and Sophia, confirming their plan to cut Lena out of his life. But the real bombshell. A video from a hidden camera in the resort showing Damien and Sophia laughing about how easy it was to get rid of Lena. Lena felt her stomach twist when she saw it, but she held on to her anger. This was the proof they needed. Step 3. The final blow. Once the evidence was in place, Lena and Adrian waited for the perfect moment. Damien was set to attend a high-profile corporate event, a charity gala, where he would be in the public eye. That night, as Damien stood on stage giving a speech about integrity in business, the leaked video and emails were broadcast on every screen in the venue. Gasps filled the room. Investors began whispering. Damien's confident expression turned into one of pure panic. Lena, standing in the crowd, felt her pulse race. This was it. And then her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Cold, familiar voice came through. You think you've won, Lena? Damien's voice was laced with rage. This isn't over. Her grip on the phone tightened. Oh, but it is. Damien laughed darkly. We'll see about that. The call ended. Lena turned to Adrian, her heart pounding. He's not done, she whispered. Adrian's jaw clenched. Then we stay ready. Because if Damien wanted a war, he was about to get one. Apartment, her arms wrapped around her baby girl, Amelia. The phone call from Damien still echoed in her mind. You think you've won? This isn't over. She wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Adrian leaned against the wall, arms crossed. He's going to retaliate. We need to be ready. Lena nodded. I won't let him ruin my life again. But what do you think he'll do? Adrian sighed. Knowing Damien, he'll use his money and influence to discredit you. He might even try to frame you for something. Lena swallowed hard. I need to stay ahead of him. Just then her phone buzzed again. This time it was a news notification. Her breath caught in her throat as she read the headline. Breaking news. Damien Carter denies all allegations. Claims ex-wife is mentally unstable. Lena's stomach churned. She clicked on the article and saw a statement from Damien. Lena has always struggled with emotional instability. While I sympathize with her struggles, the recent accusations against me are completely false. I would never abandon my family. This is nothing more than an attempt to smear my name. Lena's hands trembled with anger. He's trying to paint me as crazy. Adrian clenched his jaw. Typical move. He's setting the stage to make you look like the villain. Lena took a deep breath. Then we expose his real nature again. This time I go on record. No hiding. The public battle begins. The next day, Lena sat down for a live interview. She held Amelia in her arms, letting the world see the innocent child Damien had abandoned. I have nothing to hide, she said, her voice strong but filled with emotion. Damien Carter left me at a gas station when I was 8 months pregnant. He stole everything from me. And now he wants to call me unstable. Let's talk about the truth. She laid out everything. How he had manipulated her, how he had planned his escape, how he had taken Sophia on a lavish vacation while she was left homeless and alone. The interview went viral within hours. Public sympathy swung in Lena's favor. People flooded social media with outrage against Damien. His company's stock plummeted. Investors started pulling out. And then something unexpected happened. A woman from Damien's past steps forward. Lena received an anonymous message that night. You're not the first woman he's done this to. Meet me. I have something that will end him for good. Lena's heart pounded. Adrian read the message over her shoulder. It could be a trap. Or it could be the final piece we need. Lena decided to take the risk. She agreed to meet the woman. But when she arrived at the location, a quiet cafe, her blood ran cold. Because the woman waiting for her wasn't a stranger. It was someone she never thought she'd see again. Someone who had disappeared years ago. Damien's first wife. Lena froze in the doorway of the cafe. Her breath catching in her throat. The woman sitting at the corner table lifted her eyes. Dark, familiar, filled with pain. Sit, she said softly. Lena hesitated but moved forward cautiously. Adrian stayed by the entrance, watching for any signs of trouble. You're Damien's first wife? Lena asked, barely believing it. The woman nodded. Yes. My name is Isabel. Lena's mind raced. Damien had never spoken much about his past marriages. She had assumed his first wife had simply moved on. But if Isabel was here now, reaching out to her, there had to be a reason. You said I wasn't the first woman he did this to, Lena said. What did you mean? Isabel let out a shaky breath. Damien Carter is a monster. He doesn't just leave women. He destroys them. And if you don't stop him now, he'll make sure you never get back on your feet. Lena clenched her fists. Tell me everything. Isabel's story. I married Damien when I was young, just like you, Isabel began. At first, he was charming, generous. I thought I had found my perfect husband. But once he knew he had control over me, everything changed. Lena listened intently as Isabel described a chillingly familiar pattern. Damien had isolated her from her friends, controlled all her finances, and made sure she had nowhere to go if she ever thought of leaving. When I got pregnant, I thought maybe he'd change, Isabel whispered. I thought he'd finally love me. Lena's heart pounded. What happened? Isabel's eyes darkened. He left, just like he did to you. One day he packed his bags, took my money and disappeared. But it didn't stop there. He spread lies about me, said I was unstable, that I cheated. He turned everyone against me. Lena felt a lump in her throat. Where's your child now? A shadow passed over Isabel's face. Gone. Lena's blood ran cold. What do you mean, gone? Isabel gritted her teeth. I lost the baby. I went into early labor because of the stress. He didn't even come to the hospital. When I woke up, he had already started the divorce process. I had nothing left. Tears welled in Lena's eyes. She clutched Amelia protectively. He won't stop, Isabel warned. He'll do whatever it takes to keep his power. But this time we can take him down. Lena wiped her tears. How? Isabel pulled out a USB drive. I have proof. Financial records, hidden accounts, illegal transactions. Things that could ruin him forever. Lena's hands trembled as she took the USB. But be careful, Isabel added. If he finds out what we're doing, he'll do whatever it takes to silence us. Lena met her gaze with determination. Then we'll make sure he doesn't see it coming. Lena clutched the USB drive in her trembling hands, her mind racing. The weight of Isabel's words pressed against her chest. Damien had destroyed lives before, and he wouldn't hesitate to do it again. But this time he had underestimated her. Adrian moved closer, his voice steady but filled with concern. Lena, this is dangerous. If Damien finds out. I don't care, Lena interrupted, fire burning in her eyes. He left me to suffer. He abandoned our daughter before she was even born. And now, I finally have the chance to make sure he never does this to another woman again. Isabel nodded. Then we need to be smart about this. We can't just hand this over to the police. Damien has powerful connections. Lena exhaled sharply. Then what do we do? Building the case. For the next few days, Lena, Adrian, and Isabel worked in secrecy. They combed through the evidence, uncovering shocking details. Offshore accounts, fraudulent business dealings, and even bribes to high-ranking officials. Lena's hands shook as she read through the documents. He's stolen millions, ruined lives, and no one has stopped him. Isabel's jaw tightened. Because he always covers his tracks. But with this, we can expose him. Adrian frowned. If we take this to the media, he'll lose his reputation, but he might still find a way out. We need to hit him where it hurts the most. His money. Lena nodded. Then we need to leak this to the right people. The authorities, the investors, and the press. A dangerous move. The plan was set. They would release the documents anonymously, ensuring that the right agencies received them simultaneously. The media would be forced to cover the scandal, and Damien wouldn't have enough time to silence everyone. But just as they finalized the details, Lena's phone buzzed. Unknown number. I know what you're doing. Stop now or you'll regret it. Lena's breath caught in her throat. Adrian grabbed the phone, his face darkening. He knows. Isabel's face paled. We have to act fast. Determined, Lena looked at them both. Then let's finish this before he has the chance to stop us. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows as sirens wailed outside. The police had arrived. Damien's face twisted with fury as he turned back to Lena. You think you've won, he hissed. Lena stood tall, her chin lifted. No, Damien. I know I have. The pounding at the door grew louder. Damien Carter. This is the police. We have a warrant for your arrest. Open the door now. Adrian took a step closer to Lena, his presence a silent reassurance. Isabel stood behind them, her phone recording everything. Damien's fists clenched, his mind racing. This isn't over, he spat. Lena didn't flinch. It is for you. With a final glare, Damien turned and bolted toward the back door. But Adrian was faster. With one swift movement, Adrian tackled him to the ground. Damien struggled, but Adrian was stronger. He pinned him down, his voice low and steady. It's over, Carter. The front door burst open as officers swarmed in, guns drawn. Hands where we can see them. Adrian slowly stepped back, raising his hands as the police restrained Damien, slapping cuffs onto his wrists. Damien snarled, his face red with rage. You'll regret this, Lena. Lena met his gaze, her expression unreadable. I already regretted ever trusting you. But not anymore. As the officers dragged Damien away, the weight on Lena's chest finally lifted. It was over. Justice served. The trial moved quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. Fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, and now an attempt to flee justice. The jury didn't take long to decide. Guilty. Lena sat in the courtroom, watching as the judge handed down the sentence, 25 years without parole. Damien turned once more to face her, his eyes full of hate. But Lena wasn't afraid anymore. She held Mila in her arms, her daughter safe and happy. She had won. A new beginning. Months passed, and life finally settled into something beautiful. Lena, Adrian, and Isabel worked together to launch a foundation for women who had been abandoned or mistreated. The donations poured in, and soon they were changing lives. One evening, as Lena watched the sunset from her new home, Adrian walked up beside her. You did it, he said softly. Lena turned to him, smiling. We did. He hesitated before speaking. Lena, Before he could finish, Mila's tiny voice called out, Mama! Lena laughed, scooping her daughter into her arms. Yes, my love. Mila reached out to Adrian, and he smiled, taking her from Lena. As he held her, something warm bloomed in Lena's heart. Maybe, just maybe, a new chapter was beginning. One where love wasn't betrayal. One where she and Mila could finally be happy.